Welcome to D&D Builds, where today we have our first viewer-requested D&D build. We're diving into the Netflix show Aggretsuko, so hopefully we can stat the main character, Retsuko. For those unfamiliar with the show, it is a bit unique. There are three main elements to the show. One, it's cute references to Japanese culture, but also Japanese work life. Then there's the obvious, which is that it's animated animals in a somewhat Japanese anime style, which we've seen in shows such as Africa Salaryman, and we see other depictions of work culture in anime in a few slice of life shows, but more often than not, most anime are looking at escaping the workplace, which is why there's so many isekai shows. Then there's also the unique aspect of metal music in the show. There's been plenty of crossovers between animation and metal over the years, between movies like Heavy Metal or, more recently, the show Death Clock. And there's even been crossovers between metal and cute Japanese culture, such as the now infamous band Baby Metal. But there's very few instances where all three of these things collide, and that's where the show Aggretsuko comes in. We're going to focus on the main character, although we will touch on a few of the side characters here and there. The main character is a red panda named Retsuko, living in Japan and stuck in a salary job of an accounting department of a very large company. She finds a unique way of letting out all of her frustrations by going to karaoke and really letting out the screams as she sings as much metal as she can handle. She has an interesting group of friends and a real pain-in-the-ass pig boss. So without much further explanation, let's dive into the build. The hardest thing to pick in a build like this is going to be the race, since there doesn't happen to be a tiny red panda listed in D&D's race options, despite a few other franchises really focusing in on the whole panda idea. She's definitely considered small compared to most of her peers, and we can find depictions of most races to be kind of a cute version if you dig deep enough. So I was tempted to go with Harengon from the source book The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is essentially a rabbit folk type of race. But in the end, with her personality, I think Kobold actually works a little better. We can find a few cute depictions of kobolds to make it look a little closer to a red panda, as red pandas are undeniably adorable. They are considered small, and they have a unique ability which I think applies to Retsuko, which is called Grovel, Cower, and Beg. This allows you to take an action on your turn to cower pathetically and distract nearby foes, giving your allies advantage. Some of her other friends, like Feniko, Ukami, and Haida, are all more dog type characters, so you can go with the plane shift style races such as Kenra, which is much more of a dog or canine type race. Her friend Director Gory is a bit more of a hulking gorilla, so you can stick with something like a Goliath. At a certain point in the show, Retsuko does join an idol group, and the other lead singer happens to be a rabbit, where we can use the Harengon race, although technically she's considered a chinchilla. And then her ex-boyfriend Tadano could probably fall into either a satyr or centaur, since he is some sort of horse or donkey. And just to cover our bases, her boss Tone, who is a very large pig man, would definitely be considered an orc with his aggressive nature, and throughout history orcs have been depicted as kind of pig people. And just because she probably wouldn't let us forget it, Kabe, the hippo woman, would probably fall into the orc idea as well, just from her general look, even if her personality doesn't quite fall into that same aggressive nature. Gory's friend Washimi, being of some sort of eagle race, would obviously be an Aarakocra, and since she seems to have some hidden wisdom, this works especially well. As far as background, that's pretty easy. We can just grab Entertainer and keep moving. This gives us proficiency in performance and a musical instrument, which just kind of makes sense. Although a slight alternative to Entertainer could be Guild Artisan, and then you could put down that you're a scribe, as you do work a day job of being an accountant. Let's jump into class. We're going to focus mostly on the main character here. Since most of the characters on the show would be more common NPCs, we want to focus on the main character and how to build her out. And it should be pretty obvious. If we need to have somebody that lets out all of her frustrations through singing metal, we're going to go with Bard. That's going to make the stats pretty obvious. So we won't be jumping into stats level by level like we do with some of our other builds. Aggretsuko is a performer, so just dump as much as possible into charisma, throw some into dexterity for when she's whipping around her nunchucks, and just try and balance out the rest with maybe dumping strength. She's not exactly Miss Strength like Gory. So let's figure out a specific bard college, and then we'll dive into a handful of spells to really make this work. As much as I wish Wizards of the Coast would come out with some sort of heavy metal college so I can build out every heavy metal character I ever wanted, unfortunately they have yet to do that. So let's see what we have to work with. A basic bard can inspire those around them, and they have jack of all trades, so they're not terrible at any particular skill. They get expertise. We're going to give Aggretsuko expertise in performance because she's got the views to back it up. And then you get other ways to inspire those around you or counter charm to disrupt others, things like that. So let's go through the colleges. First up, we have College of Creation. This could have some possibilities if we take it a bit more metaphorically, as they have an ability called Note of Potential. Creating a tiny moat of potential does show how she can increase the potential in those around her. But in D&D, this is taken a bit more literally as you create an actual moat of potential, like a little gem, so that doesn't work quite as well. And you have the ability Animating Performance. And if we take this in a bit more of a fourth wall breaking kind of idea, Animating Performance for an animated show could work, but we do have to make it a bit of a stretch. So let's keep this one in our back pocket just in case. Next up, we have the College of Eloquence. This is all about saying the right thing at just the right time. So definitely not Aggretsuko, but this might fit a bit more for her friend Washimi if we were building her. So moving right along, we have the College of Glamour. This one actually is a viable option, as it has Mantle of Inspiration and enthralling performance to charm those around you. The bards of this college are noted in Xanathar's Guide to Everything that they are regarded with a mixture of awe and fear, and their performances are the stuff of legend. So this could work. We're gonna hang on to this, but it definitely beats out College of Creation for right now. Next up, we have College of Lore. This has the ability Cutting Words, which is noted to be able to distract, confuse, or sap the confidence and competence out of others. I think this applies a bit more to tone than Aggretsuko herself, so definitely a no-go. Then we have College of Spirits from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, which is a bit more of a spooky theme, but it has abilities like Guiding Whispers, and Aggretsuko doesn't really try to guide anyone. That's more Sunoda or the manager of her idol group, so we'll skip that one for now. There's also College of Valor. This is kind of a basic, generic type of bard that can have some combat abilities. And while Aggretsuko does learn how to do some combat after she got attacked by an obsessed fan, this is a bit too generic and not really a fan of it. So we'll skip this one. Next we have College of Whispers. These bards tend to be a bit more of the gossipy or sneaky type of bard, which is definitely more Kabe or Feneko, with Kabe doing nothing but gossiping and Feneko really being able to dive into everybody's social media and try and find out everything about them. So doesn't apply to Aggretsuko quite as much. Last up, we have College of Swords, which gives you some bonus proficiencies in weapons to use, and you can really flourish your weapons. So considering that she gets really good with using nunchucks, I think this is the way to go, especially since she learned to use this weapon as a defensive tactic, and defensive flourish could really be useful to someone like her. This gives you proficiency with a simple or martial weapon. And on page 78 of the Player's Handbook, there happens to be a reference in the Monk class as to how nunchucks would be created in D&D. As it's really just two clubs connected by a chain, you would use the stats from a club. But personally, I think a flail could work as well, which works with this class because a flail is a martial weapon, so that could be what you use. Feel free to pick whichever. Now let's jump into some spells that would really apply to Aggretsuko, as well as some other idol groups or even metal bands. Bards do have the ability to dive into a few other classes to get additional spells if they really need them, but we don't have to worry about that too much because we're really focusing on bard spells and abilities. We don't really have to go level by level of the build, as we're really just going to be focusing on a specific type of spell that applies, but we'll still try and go upwards in actual power of spell. Starting with cantrips, obviously we have to take Vicious Mockery. Aggretsuko really lets out some intense insults while she's belting it out in karaoke.
Here it comes big, give a battle cry! You're shitty boss! You're shitty boss! I hate you so much!
She also has some great friends around her, so we can take the friends cantrip. And then lastly, we can probably grab Thunderclap, as that is a very sound-based attack. If you did want to dive into some other classes' spells, you could grab Thaumaturgy, but that's only if you really want to. For level 1 spells, we obviously have to take Animal Friendship, because Aggretsuko herself and all of her friends are animals, so it kind of just makes sense. We can also take the first level spell Thunderclap, which creates a burst of thunderous sound. We can grab Disguise Self for when Aggretsuko wants to go really unnoticed. There's also spells like Dissonant Whispers, but I think that applies a bit more to Fenico. Or Silvery Barbs, but considering that just creates uncertainty in others, that's a bit more of a tone spell. What we're really going to focus on is Thunder Wave, as it creates a thunderous force that sweeps around you. We can also grab Charm Person, because everybody around her does seem to be pretty charmed by her. And there's also the option for Command, for when she's on stage trying to command fans to do things, but I think we'll have that fairly well covered in our level 2 spell, Suggestion. Additionally, as far as level 2 spells, we can grab things like Aid, which bolsters your allies' toughness and resolve. I think this is great for anybody that's singing metal, as you want your fans to be able to handle a mosh pit or wall of death whenever they need to. We're definitely going to avoid spells like Gift of Gab, as if anything, she needs to just speak up more. So maybe we can take Silence, but you don't really want to cast that on yourself, as it's a pretty negative effect. But we can take Shatter, as it creates a sudden loud ringing noise, painfully intense, that erupts from a point within range, as if it's blasting from a nearby speaker. And the last spell we can take from the level 2 list is probably Pyrotechnics, because any performer should have some good pyrotechnics on their side. As far as level 3 spells, we can grab Hypnotic Pattern to really mesmerize the audience, Motivational Speech for when you want to inspire your friends, especially like Haida, and that's about it from this level. You can take Fast Friends, but really I think Aggretsuko takes a while to warm up to people, so it doesn't quite apply. When it comes to level 4 spells, we can upgrade our Charm Person for Charm Monster. We're also going to take Compulsion, as this allows you to command a direction that people move, and there's tons of references to metal singers commanding the crowd to move in a particular way, whether it's for a wall of death, circle of death, or mosh pit. Another fun one when it comes to throwing around insults is you can take it to the next level with Rolathim's Psychic Lance and really pierce the brain of those that you are naming with this attack. The last spell of this level to consider is Confusion, but usually Aggretsuko herself is the one that's confused, so we'll skip that one. In the level 5 spell list, we have things like Hold Monster, which mostly applies to Haida, as he kind of gets frozen in place sometimes when he's overwhelmed by talking to Aggretsuko, so she might cast that without quite realizing it. And we also have Synaptic Static. This might be a little bit of a stretch, but it could be a bit more like static coming from the speakers themselves and interfering with somebody's thoughts in the audience. As far as level 6 spells, there's only 2 spells that really work here. That's Mass Suggestion, so you can really influence the crowd and get a super massive pit going. And then there's Otto's Irresistible Dance. That's pretty self-explanatory. You want people to dance to your music, depending on what you count as dancing. From the level 7 spells, there's really only one that applies here, and I would go with Project Image. This could substitute for either being on screen at a concert or even projecting her image on YouTube. Now all the way up to the level 8 spells, we can take a few things here. Feeble Mind is great because it shatters the intellect and personality of somebody, and someone like Haida gets completely obliterated mentally when he's around her, which could also relate to the spell Mind Blank, but the actual specifics of the spell Mind Blank don't really apply, as it just makes you immune to psychic damage. And the last spell we could take from this is Power Word Stun. You speak a word of power that can overwhelm the mind of one creature you can see within range, and she does this a few times, so it's worth taking. And finally, in the level 9 spells, we've got a few choices here, but since we have 2 power words and power word just being in the name of the spell means that it could probably apply, but considering it's kind of death metal, we could take power word kill, or we have the option for psychic scream to really belt out those metal chords. But that's it. Aggretsuko is pretty straightforward, and we even touched on a handful of the other characters from Aggretsuko. I really enjoyed doing a build that was suggested by a viewer. It was super fun and definitely allowed me to stretch my brain a bit. So if anybody else has suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. I always love the new ideas and I try and get creative with it. If you like Aggretsuko, baby metal, anime, or any of the subjects we covered today, let me know by hitting that like button below. And if you like D&D builds in general, feel free to subscribe. I post every single week. Thanks for watching, and I hope every one of my viewers gets at least 3 nat 20s in their next D&D session. Until next time, this has been your D&D build of the week.